What's going on, YouTube? How's it going? Today I really thought we could do something that I've really wanted to do for a while now. It is a thing that is obviously very opinion based, and anybody can do it. How they define it is totally up to them, but this is personally how I define the four major eras of anime and what I personally think they bring to the table, their cons, and what they all justify, what they all meant, and how they all fit into the piece of where we are now for 2022 in the modern era of anime. So with that out of the way, let's get on to the first one. Alright, so first things first, we have Phase 1. Phase 1, in my opinion, would be around, pretty much, well, I guess you could, technically speaking, go from like Doraemon and Detective Conan and all those ancient ones. So like the 60s-ish, 70s, all the way up to about 94, 95. These ones were mostly OVAs, movies, action-based things. Things honestly, in my opinion, was a very golden era. Sure, towards like the mid to late 80s slash early 90s is when we started getting the shonen as we know. For example, like Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball, frick, I could probably go on for quite a while, but Sailor Moon. But we also got the beautiful like OVAs and things, like Kite and Angel Cop and Jenna Cyber, and just a ton of these gruesome ass frickin' OVAs that were just top of the line. It was an era where everything was hand drawn and detail was immense. I mean, sure, we had these characters that, sure, their faces and some of their animation isn't as smooth as modern-esque era things, but my goodness, the amount of time and work that these people put into these projects is absurd. And not only that, but we got so much originality when it came to characters and development and plot, and it was so original because at the time, not a whole hell of a lot of these things were out there, and that was the thing that kept everybody wanting to come in. Granted, at this point in time with the Western audiences, there was barely anything, but what was being pumped out at the time, little did America know, and every other Western country, was going to be a huge influence in about 10 years as to what it is today, and I respect the hell out of that. Granted, it wasn't the biggest era of anime. It may have had some of the best pieces of work, in my opinion, and just some of the greatest storylines to date. But it wasn't the biggest thing yet. It was still very much into there was still like fan dubs and VHSs and all that stuff coming over here for the big fans. But to an easily accessible audience, it was not a thing. And that's kind of where the next era is going to come and take over, and I guess for the most part define the next gen, the first Western gen-esque main era of weebism, and this era is probably my favorite personally. This is the era of, I would say, 95, 96 to around 2004, 2005, which I'd like to call the dawn of an era. It was very much when things had a turnaround. We had in 1996 with the huge decline of anime, and what came in changes the game for everything. Neon Genesis Evangelion changed the game. It did so well in the box offices that the industry just went boof. It skyrocketed, and we had so many come out in the later 90s, early 2000s that I could just go on for a long time about them. But it I think a lot of the newer generation of anime fans and goers dis- dislike most of this era because of the animation, which is really sad because, in my opinion, it started to go more from the hand-drawn, cell shading esque era, and it was still there, granted, but it was also the beginning of the early CGI stages, and just they updated. You know, the art started to get better with technology as it came along. But I still, even I have a few friends that I personally know that aren't a big fan of this era, which I don't know why, because like I said, it's such a great era. It was like the first era, but on steroids. Granted, things weren't quite as gory because I know there was a lot of less blood in this era per se of anime. But my goodness, did they do such a fantastic job. Not only were the budgets getting bigger, but the audiences were getting bigger, and holy cow was it showing. And you know, people could say what they want about the PC culture and everything along those lines, especially the amount of fucks that they did not give at the time. But what I was always most interested about anime through this era was the fact that the plots were never just given to you. You actually had to mentally think most of the time. Now, obviously, that isn't the case with everything, like I've got here Iki Towson right now, but it was still better than the seasons to come from that. And you know, hey, like I said, I understand that this isn't for everybody, but my goodness, this era, in my personal opinion, is the best era. And on top of that, the later half of this era introduced one of the most huge and substantial things to the modern West Coast anime, and that is Elfen Lied. As everybody knows, Stranger Things' huge influence was from Elfen Lied. Then on top of that, this is around the era we got Toonami, which, you know, is mostly ones from the first era that I have mentioned, but it was definitely a good start and to where it's gonna lead these people coming soon into the near future, which gives all of the hope. It's into the next era of 2005 to about 2014, which I personally call the modern era of familiarity, or the familiar arc. This arc here is where a lot of people like millennials, for instance, people like my age, I guess. I mean, I started around the second era, my bad. The second era is when I kind of started with Toonami and everything, but this era was the era where more people started finding things and watching it. Granted, at this point, it still was kind of like people totally made fun of you for what you're watching in this era, but you know, that's fine. As long as we enjoyed it, we wanted to watch and enjoy, who gives a shit? But with the more mainstream eye coming onto things and the Western audience grasping onto this, we had so much anime, and a good chunk of it was amazing. Honestly, this is my personal favorite. Last era was second favorite, and the first era was my third favorite. Those two are kind of neck and neck, but I digress. This era had so many bangers, and for good reason. Like, this is where they started to, in my opinion, do the right balance of cell with CGI. I mean, don't even think about the Berserk reboot. Don't just throw that out the trash. We don't need to think about it. But this era had banger after banger. You know, and that's just the thing about it. Like, last era was familiarity. This one's where it's like, okay, people didn't realize how much stuff came out in that era. For example, for all you Demon Slayer stands out there, we had Nura, Rise of the Yokai Clan, way back in the day, which was one of my, to be fair, it still is one of my favorite demon slash shogun pieces of all time. It had such beautiful art. The character designs are crazy,
And let me tell you, it can't be beat. And to match what I said earlier, we had pieces like Cube Rubik or Cube the Third, which were substantial plot-wise, but at the same time, we're starting to showcase some of that just outstanding animation. Granted, the plots were starting to get a little worse in some cases, but holy crap, it was a time with it just was a time. Like, oh my goodness. And then we had the beautiful era of schoolgirls, which were already a thing, but my goodness, was it ever emphasized in this era. We got, romance and girls with guns and like, oh, which I know what you're thinking at this point. Squids, this has nothing to do with anything, and I don't know why you say this era is so great. But just from the 4 pieces of work I'm showing you right now, you can't tell me that this was not an era of excellence and amazingness.
Had there been better? Of course there had. There's always better, and there's probably 10 billion times better reasons and actual analysis on why these different, acts or arcs, whatever I'm calling them, are good and why they're the best or why they're better. But for entertainment reasons, I think this is the best arc. You can fight me all you want in the comments, but this is when the audiences started to come around. We were able to get Blu-rays. They didn't really exist in half that line, but DVDs, VHSs, I don't know if kids remember those, but that was the era where we were starting to get those. We got professional dubs. We had the subs, which, I mean, honestly, I prefer the original context, but that's not for everybody. Like I said, the animations were improving, and then on top of that, we were just getting an explosion. So for every one that you didn't like, there was like 2 or 3 that you did like. And that was the awesome thing about that era. I mean, I could just go on and on and on and on and on of a list of reasons why this era was the best era. But I could do that, or I could just go on to the final arc, which is what I think I'm going to do. And I personally like to call this arc the arc of, I hate to say this, but the arc of a new time. The arc of a new time, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I could say a lot of things about this arc. Do we get a lot of garbage that makes absolutely no sense? Yes. Yes, we do. But at the same time, holy crap. This is an era where we get so much fan service for things in the last era that I was talking about that got a season and was a one-off for source material sales, manga, light novel sales, visual novels, and we're getting them. The industry right now is a complete fan service haven, and not only that, but I'll show examples here in a sec, but we have some of the highest notch quality animes. Like just the other day at a Crunchyroll Expo, we finally got the final trailer and announcement for Chainsaw Man, which has been hyped up for a very, very long freaking time. But holy shit! On top of that, animes, for example, like my favorite, pretty much at this point in time, Mushoku Tensei. Holy crap! You cannot parallel to these. They've came up with the perfect balance of CGI and cel shade and all that fun stuff. It is great. The top tier ones are slightly harder to find, but the ones that do come out in this era are fantastic. This is the era now, obviously, like I said, 2015 to modern time. So this is when the trend, the trend for anime being cool really hit. And I don't know. I don't know.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because most of these reboots or second seasons that we are getting are a big part to the modernity and trendiness of anime nowadays. And personally, I'm forever grateful for that. I think that's really awesome. It kind of stinks that the ones in my personal opinion are bad taste are the ones that are getting so big nowadays. But at the same time, who really cares, you know? As long as people are enjoying this and it's getting popular and we're still getting good pieces of art to come out of this, honestly, I could care less. Because in reality, it's made it big enough now where we get these amazing pieces and they are accessible. And the coolest part is, it's all taste. Some people think things are great, some people think things aren't great. But overall, we are getting completely spoiled. And let me tell you, I'm okay with that. So, you know, the best things have came out of this arc. And oh my god, if sifting through a little shit and, you know, some partially annoying fandoms and Western audiences,
It's gonna take for the popularity in the modern era of the new world to take off and make it so it's accessible, so more people can see it, and we can get merchandise and all of these things which have been available for, you know, the last like 2 eras now in America. But my goodness, it's a blessing in this. And you know, like I said, as somebody that got into this when I was like 5, 6, early 2000s, and still to this day is a huge piece of crap weeaboo, this era is amazing. I do give a lot of shit to a lot of things coming out nowadays, but all in all, I am very grateful for this era, and I am happy it made so many things possible to come and what is to come. It's definitely my favorite era. It has majority I have a lot of favorites. I watch pretty much a handful of everything from every season, as everybody that watches my videos knows. But it's great. And that pretty much wraps up everything I really had to say about the 4 eras. I didn't want to go too in depth on this video. I didn't want to make it super long. But I just wanted to show pieces of work from every era, kind of a little bit of what changed in the eras. Not you know, like a thorough statistical evaluation. Just kind of what I think, where I divide the eras up, which ones are my favorites. And hey, you know what? You gotta like what you want. And that's actually what I want to hear from you guys. If you've made it this far into the video, let me know in the comments what your favorite era is, what your favorite animes are, why you like them. And if you enjoyed this video enough, give it a like. If you want to see my face again, give it a sub. And I will be back on the channel more than likely pretty soon here. So without further ado, peace.